If we look at the coronavirus right now, so we're locked down in our houses. Initially, they were telling us 14 days. We're going to do like a 14-day lockdown. Kids will be out of school for 14 days. Now this is extended all the way through the summertime. My kid's whole district is locked down, is shut down, canceled completely all the way through summer. And you have Dr. Fauci, who's telling us that we shouldn't shake hands anymore forever after this. I guess you look at certain studies, and they show that for every 1% of unemployment increase, about 5,300 to 10,000 people will die. And I did a whole analysis on this. I believe that just looking at the numbers, that potentially more people can die from the economic effects of this, deaths of despair, suicide, drug overdose, alcoholism, things like this, than they would die from the actual virus itself. So I guess my question was going to be, what are your thoughts on the virus? As far as like the lockdown is concerned, we're talking about we need some sort of balance here. I mean, Dr. Fauci's talking about we should never shake anyone's hand ever again after this, and that this will never subside after summertime. And we're seeing police drones flying around telling people to get back inside. I was all for like a 2-week shutdown to save some people, but now it's just going like it's just getting way out of hand for me as far as like the government, Google sharing their location data with the government. I mean, they've always done this, but to try to track you, where you go, your movements, who you talk to, how much recreation you're doing, to make sure that you're social distancing. I don't know if we're ever going to go back to truly normal once they get this sort of power. I mean, I think that the libertarian argument for this is pretty valid, whereas I was sort of in favor of the shutdown for the first couple weeks or so. Give us your full analysis of this.
Yeah, well, first of all, who appointed Anthony Fauci our leader? How does he suddenly become the leader of the United States? No one elected him. And it's not just –
He failed on AIDS. He failed on basically everything he tried.
I mean, if there ever a guy who failed upwards, it's Anthony Fauci. I mean, Anthony Fauci was the guy who was in charge of the whole AIDS debacle, and this is sort of AIDS 2.0. So what happened with AIDS? AIDS was, everybody knew, it suddenly appears on the scene, homosexuals are dying. Well, okay, homosexuals are dying. That's too bad, but in many ways, why are they doing what they're doing? You can't act that way and not expect some type of consequences. Well, at this point, everybody said, well, that's their problem, sorry. And then the government enters in 1984, and Margaret Heckler announces that it's caused by a virus. Does this sound familiar? So the virus now has never been isolated. How do you know it's caused by a virus? Well, she didn't know. And it wasn't caused by a virus. It was a lifestyle disease. But as soon as she said it was caused by a virus, then there's this push. She said herself there will be a cure. We'll isolate it and there will be a cure. There will be a vaccine or something like that. And so once she said that, then the homosexuals mobilized through groups like ACT UP, and they started staging die-ins at the Health and Human Services building in Washington, and this increased political pressure. And at this point, Anthony Fauci saw his moment of opportunity, and he started taking the side of the homosexuals. They thought this was great, and so what he did was fast-track AZT, which is one of the most toxic chemicals ever created by the mind of man. AZT stopped the replication of every single cell in your body. That's why it was used as chemotherapy. And the hope was that the cancer would die before you did. Well, it turns out it didn't work that way. Thousands of people died from the cure and not from the disease. People who had no people. So they're spreading this panic that it's going to spread general population. And then suddenly hemophiliacs are worried, and the hemophiliacs start testing, and they test positive for HIV. The test was meaningless.
Right.
They tested positive for HIV, and then they started taking AZT, and it killed them. The poster boy for hemophiliac HIV was a boy by the name of Ryan White from Indiana, and he was killed by AZT, not by AIDS. Okay, he didn't have AIDS. He was not a homosexual. The reason Magic Johnson is alive today and Arthur Ashe isn't is because Magic Johnson stopped taking AZT after he tested HIV positive. This is, and again, I don't want to sound like a libertarian, but this is the danger that happens when the government
Right.
throws its power behind bad science, behind basically ideology masquerading as science. And that's what Fauci is. He's the mouthpiece of big pharma. That's what he is to this day. Why is Trump doing this? What is Trump stupid or what? Why would he bring him on stage with him to have him contradict everything he's saying? Now, what I said about Logos is true of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to have make decisions. Donald Trump is not a virologist. He's not an epidemiologist. He's not a microbiologist, but he's going to have to make decisions based on all of this competing expert testimony. He's going to have to see through this thing. And the first thing he's going to have to see through is that Anthony Fauci is a man you do not want to listen to, because he is the mouthpiece of the oligarchs in this regard. Now, the oligarchs all have the same narrative, okay? To give an example, Jeffrey Sachs weighed in. Jeffrey Sachs is the man who created disaster capitalism.
Well, I want to say something really quick. There's a picture of Anthony Fauci, and he's been in administration after administration, but there's a picture with and I know that one picture doesn't mean anything, but he's pictured with George Soros. He's pictured with Bill Gates Sr. in this one like giant photo with a whole bunch of Richard Parsons, Barbara Walters. This is Anthony Fauci in this particular picture. So that's one thing of note to mention there. But go on.
Right. And Anthony Fauci is on the leadership board of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates, so what does Jeffrey Sachs do? The expert at disaster capitalism wrecked the economy of Bolivia, brought the communists to power into Bolivian reaction, looted the economy of Russia. And now what does he say in this article? We have to have lockdown for as long as possible through June, he's talking about, and we have to put this whole thing in the capable hands of Anthony Fauci. Well, I mean, what is this? Great minds running in the same circle? No, it's a conspiracy here.
And
it's
Bill
the
Gates,
oligarchs.
too. He's not even a doctor.
Right.
Bill Gates is like all over the media now.
Bill Gates, the headline today, I think it was MSNBC, whatever it is, one of those things says, Bill Gates tells us how long the lockdown will last. Well, wait a minute, Bill. Who elected you? Who gave you the right to determine things like this? You're nobody. I know you have a lot of money, but this is exactly what I was trying to say at the beginning. If you separate the moral law from the state, you're going to be ruled by rich people. And that's exactly the situation we're in right now. Who is the real ruler of this country? This is the big question. The media has spent the entire past 4 years, demonizing Donald Trump. Okay? Who is the ruler? Well, who's their alternative? Their alternative is the oligarch. The oligarchs are upset because they lost control of the narrative in 2019, largely because of what we are doing right now. Okay, we're talking, and this narrative, the internet narrative, the discussions on the internet, basically expose the mainstream media as the paid shills that they are. And so they're trying to catch up, and this is their way of reasserting control of the narrative. And they're doing it. Let's face it. What are we talking about? We're talking about the COVID virus and the fact that our lives are determined by unelected officials who are telling us how long we have to stay indoors. Oh, this is tyranny.
Well,
and
not only that, but
we can hope.
There's a law that was just they were just talking about barring certain private businesses, stores, from selling non-essential items. So it's like and then we're talking about data, location services, drones flying overhead. I just don't know if this is ever going to go back to normal after they've reached a certain point.
Look, this is not going to prevail. Because they're undoing the very thing that they think they're imposing. This is the way God works in history. Hegel called it the cunning of reason, die List der Vernunft, and he lets evil accumulate evil till it breaks down and brings about the opposite. So what is the main problem with this plan? Okay, up until now, 25 years ago, I wrote a book called Libido Dominandi, in which I said that sexual liberation is a form of political control. And everybody just, wow, that's ridiculous. Well, last year, suddenly it wasn't so ridiculous because you had a lot of 20-year-olds who were addicted to pornography. And they understood that was right. It's true.
So what are we having now? By the way, that's still going on. I mean, there's people who are having, like, now doctors have labeled porn-induced erectile, like they're diagnosing porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Doctors are diagnosing this. I think many people have reached out to me and explained, the problems that they've been having. So this is not like, this is still going on. I mean, it is a form of control. And this is the book, by the way. I'm showing it on screen here, Libido Dominandi. You can find this at culturewars.com, right? Culturewars.com. So make sure. But go ahead and continue.
So what are we talking about? We're talking about a country here, the United States, and a group of people like the libertarians who let's say the country is saying this is based on freedom. Well, what are they doing now? They are undermining their own narrative because it's now becoming obvious that this state is based on control. It's not based on freedom. It's based on the manipulation of the illusion of freedom in areas like sexuality as a way of imposing control on you. And so they let the cat out of the bag now. And we all know that the United States of America is interested in control. They're not interested in freedom. It's control. This is obvious. And the oligarchs who are promoting this type of sexual freedom, sodomy, homosexuality, the whole thing, are really doing that to control us. And pornography is a form of control. And suddenly it's obvious.
The IMF is predicting, by the way, that the coronavirus will trigger the worst global recession since the Great Depression in the 1930s. This is what the IMF is predicting. So
yeah, I have a slightly different view. I think that the coronavirus was orchestrated to disguise the worst depression since this time. That the crash was inevitable. The economy was heading in that direction, and now suddenly this is a convenient way of distracting everyone's attention from the malfeasance that brought us about. And the malfeasance is largely usury. It's this economy, because Paul Volcker put the usurers in power, the usurers were able to appropriate all surplus value. What do I mean by that? Surplus value is the difference between a pound of flour and a loaf of bread. The only thing that got added to the flour was human labor. It made it more valuable, and you got a higher price for it. How does the oligarchs appropriate that surplus value? Through usury. And beginning in 1973, they introduced, when wages stopped going up, they introduced the credit card. And it gave people the illusion that they had the same amount of money when they were just going deeper and deeper into debt. That's the issue. That's the issue that led to the crash of the economy. The economy is overweight, way too much debt. And this is their way of disguising that fact and distracting you from it. That's what's going on.
Yeah, I think last question before I let you go here. By the way, go to culturewars.com to pick up his new book, Logos Rising, and Libido Dominandi is still up there as well. Great book. Do you think that Donald Trump, if he gets reelected in 2020, which I think is appearing very likely, if he gets reelected in 2020, do you think there's two ways, I believe, that he can go? He can either go the way of the neocons that are populating his administration completely, or he can go from certain reports we're hearing that he's going to basically fire everyone and replace everyone. He just had a meeting with Douglas McGregor that lasted 2 hours. It was only supposed to last 15 minutes. This is a Tucker Carlson guy. This is a guy that they call anti-Semitic because he's anti-Zionist, wars for Zionists. So he had this meeting with Douglas McGregor, and a lot of people are predicting that if Douglas McGregor does get some sort of position in the White House, he can move laterally from there and possibly help Trump in 2020 expel the neoconservatives in his administration. Which way do you think Trump is going to go after the 2020, barring he gets reelected?
I think that's what's the last alternative is what's going to happen. And the reason I say that is what happened to John Bolton.
Fired.
Why was John Bolton appointed? Well, he was appointed because he's a protege of Sheldon Adelson. Okay, right. That's easy. That's the easy answer.
But then
the question is, why was he fired?
Was hired, though, which is like John Bolton 2.0, unfortunately. But he's just more like he's
unfortunately.
Yeah, he just follows Trump
Okay,
more, though.
but
He listens to Trump more.
what
Go ahead.
I'm saying here is that there's only one force in the universe that is more powerful than the Israel lobby, and that is Donald Trump's ego. And I think I see him heading in that direction. The complete capture of our foreign policy by the Israel lobby was the greatest disaster of the first Trump administration.
Right.
I would. That's not what he campaigned on, but that's what we got. And I'm hoping that he will see how that has served him and react in a rational fashion and do what is right the next time around.
Yeah, I think for sure, like, he won't need the money from Sheldon. If he gets reelected, I mean, he's not going to need the money from Sheldon Adelson. He's not going to need the money from Bernard Marcus. He's not going to need the money anymore to get reelected. So, if he gets reelected in 2020, there's a potential that he can just go, one of two ways. Either the full neocon and regime change wars, which I don't think that he would. He's been talking about infrastructure and taking people out of the Middle East for the past 2 weeks, rebuilding the infrastructure. And he had this meeting with Douglas McGregor that was, if he was bought and paid for, obviously this meeting wouldn't happen. Now we're hearing that, Jared Kushner and a few others are trying to have blocked Douglas McGregor from getting in before and are trying to block him again from getting in, but we're going to have to see how that goes. But anyway, I want to thank you for coming on again. Thank you for taking the time. Dr. E. Michael Jones. You can go to culturewars.com and pick up his new book, Logos Rising. Is there anything you want to leave the audience off with?
Yeah, God is in charge of human history, but we need the eyes to see that. And that's why I wrote that book, to give people the eyes to see the big picture.